Everyone, I'm Valerie Hector, and this is the first in my series of interviews with beaders, and I'm calling the series Beading Globally. My very first guest is Laura McCabe, my longtime friend and colleague and master beader and entrepreneur. And today we're going to be talking about Laura's work, especially about the master classes, the beading master classes she's been offering for the last few years. Laura, welcome and thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Before we get started looking at some of the one-of-a-kind pieces that you've made and your master classes, I'd like to talk a little bit about your backstory. You grew up in Connecticut, am I right?
I did, and I'm still
And
here.
you still live in a small town in Connecticut, and that's your home base now. You're not traveling as much anymore, right?
Yep,
Although you did it one time.
I did 20,
You did what?
20 years on the road.
20 years on the road teaching, going out and teaching and doing shows, doing juried art shows. You started your business in 1995, which is quite a long time ago. But I remember you're telling me that you don't remember a time in your life before beads.
I do not. I have always beaded as long as I can remember.
And what age would that have been? Can you guess?
Yeah, I think when I was probably like 5, I think it started with pop beads. Do you remember those that like pop together?
Yes.
Like my great aunt had tons of them, so I was given the pop beads, and that sort of was the beginning of it, and then it went on from there. But I was stringing things when I was quite young. My mother has a little strand of beads on the Christmas tree every year that I was probably about 5 or 6 when I made those.
Okay. So you started early, and there's an advantage to that. There's a definite advantage to that. What else? In school, you studied social history. You were especially interested in women's social history, and you studied the history of costume design. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I went into historical costume, started in drama, then switched into actually more like conservation work. And my specialty was Victorian and 1920s. So they were very heavily beaded pieces, which I think I got into those because I was interested in beads. I think the beads came before the costume, and then that's what attracted me to those time periods.
But you're very much a Renaissance woman. I mean, you're a master beater. There's no question, and an educator and an entrepreneur. But you also do a few other things. You have a few other hobbies, so to speak. Can you tell us some of them?
Yeah, sure. I sew, in addition to the beading. I really enjoy gardening. That's a big thing for me. I spend a lot of time in the garden, and actually, it's funny. It creeps into my beadwork as well, because you see there are a lot of floral farms that I do. Other hobbies are collecting curiosities, and I have an extensive collection of curious items. Hatching butterflies. That's another activity I like to do. So all kinds of stuff like that.
Well, and you're going to share some of these hobbies in our next interview, which will happen in a few weeks from now, right? But in this interview, we're just going to focus on your one of a kind pieces and your master classes. So, should we get started with your one of a kind pieces?
Let's do it.
Okay. So, the very first one is this fantastic beetle wing necklace. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so that's a piece I did quite some time ago, like 2010, 2012, something like that. And I found the beetle wings first. That's what attracted me to it. So I wanted to kind of incorporate them into a piece. At that time, I was doing a lot of work with stone spikes as well. So you can see those are in the piece as well. Combination of stitching in there, but mostly peyote stitch. So circular and flat peyote stitch. And then the beetle wings were kind of interesting to work with. They're beautiful. They have this like fluttery noise that they make. The thing that I discovered upon making this is that they weren't particularly comfortable. They're a bit scratchy on the neck. It's one of those things like you make it and then you discover things like that. So the solution to that was actually to create like an underlayer all of suede. So you can't really see it in the picture, but there actually is a whole underlayer of leather under there, which makes it much more comfortable to wear. But just, fascinating material and vibrant colors, and just a lot of fun to work with.
And a beautiful, exceptional piece, one of a kind, right? You only ever made one.
Only made one. Yeah.
It's fantastic. I love it. And
Thank
the
you.
next one, you call them bird feet creatures.
Yes. the twins.
The
I love
twins.
the twins. They are some of my. I do a lot of eye creatures. A lot of them are flowers, all sorts of different things. But these guys, well, you can see they are flower eyes, but they put them on taxidermy feet. I am fascinated by taxidermy. I collect taxidermy. I use taxidermy. It's all humane taxidermy. I should clear that up from the
Mm.
beginning for those who are concerned. But that one piece or the two pieces you're looking at are the eyes set on pheasant feet. It's basically done with peyote stitch. One of the things that I did do with this one is, if you have a look, you can see there's actually like rubber tubing in there, and that was used to create almost like a neck so that the eyes pointed out as opposed to just pointing up, because otherwise they would just point right up. So yeah, that one's a lot of fun, and I had to paint the toenails because I had to paint the toenails. So
That you painted the toenails, it's a beautiful touch. They seem to me, very surreal. And I think you did mention you have an interest in surrealism.
I do, yeah. I've always had quite a love for surrealist art. I like to make it. I like to look at it. I like to collect it. So the eyes are definitely, in that vein of surrealism and that kind of aesthetic.
Yeah, they definitely seem kind of otherworldly, like they come from a different planet. But they've landed here
Yeah.
momentarily, and I think they're awesome. I love them.
Thank you. Thank you.
And the next one, your gang of creatures.
Yeah, so these are more of those eye creatures that I was talking about. These guys are just represents all the kind of sort of different types I do. I None of them are the same. They're all different. They're created as I go, so I'm not really working from much of a pattern, but they are a lot of the ones, all the ones that you see here anyway, are very geometric, and they're based on like polygons. These are dodecahedrons that are assembled, and the inside, it's hollow form, so the inside is actually hollow, which is sort of interesting. It's sort of the magic of math. But I've done them using stone spikes. Also, there's one in there that you can see that has the feathers, and that is a millinery piece, which I incorporated into it. I like to kind of look for different things to incorporate. Feathers are challenging to work with, but it's all, again, it's primarily all peyote stitch with like some surface embellishment on the pieces.
It's engineering, though. I'd love to see if you have a sample there, the hollow, a sample of the hollow inside. Because when I first saw these, I found that very hard to believe that you could have engineered them so brilliantly and precisely that they could be hollow on the inside.
Yeah, they are. This is actually a good one to see because this guy here, it's the form minus two sides. So they're 12-sided, a dodecahedron. And what I do is I do the flowers last. So this is going to have two flowers, which obviously will be attached into these two
Hold it up
spots.
higher, higher.
Yep.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
these will go into the two spots there. But if you have a look, it's still open right now. So if you kind of look inside, you can see it's hollow inside. It's
Wow.
just supporting.
And
So
there are stitches running across the interior, I think I see.
they're all, each of the stones is bezeled separately and then
Okay.
linked together, but
Okay.
there's no crisscrossing inside. It is like totally
Okay.
inside.
Okay.
And then,
So it's not just beadwork, it's engineering, or architecture.
architecture. Yeah, we'll go with architecture. Yeah.
And these pieces feel, on the one hand, very, colorful and friendly and decorative, but these spikes make them kind of reminiscent of medieval maces, those weapons. And
Indeed.
can you speak to that?
I can. My mother's a medievalist, so I spent a lot of time in castles and cathedrals and armories. So I saw a lot of that stuff when I was a kid, and always fascinated me. So this was kind of an interesting way of taking that form, but then making it a little bit more glamorous using gemstones and embellishing it with beads.
Yeah, these are definitely glamorous, and I think the tension between the color and the fun, the playful aspect, and the more aggressive aspect really works. They're very thought-provoking, beautiful pieces. I
Yeah,
love them.
I really like that, sort of dichotomy. I like to, like, as you said, sort of like a tension between the two, and you'll see it in like a lot of my work. There's that kind of edgy versus the really ornate and beautiful all in the same piece.
Yeah, I definitely see that same dichotomy, that same tension in the next this bracelet, your shark fin bracelet.
Ah, yeah. So that was again, it's done with the spikes. It was done with it's Willow Creek Jasper. No, sorry, Savannah Jasper, another Jasper, but really a soft, beautiful blue color. So I liked, the sort of really harsh, shape and the soft coloring. And then again, I did the really ornate beadwork around it. It's sort of a lot of my bracelets like that are sort of more fashion pieces. They're not particularly practical for wearing, but at least you can see it. Christina's got it on, so you can get a sense of it on the model. So you can get, scale. I think a lot of times it's hard when you look at the work because I work primarily in 15s. A lot of times it's hard to understand the scale. So putting it on a model has been really useful for conveying
And
that.
this is a fantastic model shot, that the model being kind of in black and white and the bracelet being in these soft, very complementary colors. It's just a beautiful work
Oh,
of art altogether.
thank you. Thanks.
Mhm. And a one-of-a-kind necklace, your eye chrysoprase necklace.
Ah, yeah, okay, so again, the eye and the points. This was a piece I made, for myself. I wear very little of my own jewelry, actually, but it was an award ceremony in Vegas that I had to go to. I received an award, so I had to dress up fancy, which I don't do often, but I decided to make myself a piece to wear and to kinda commemorate the, experience. So, that was done. That's done with a real prosthetic eye. So it's not a doll's eye like I use in the creatures. It's actually a real antique prosthetic. And then the spike, chrysoprase, it's actually that color. It's natural. It's not been dyed or anything, so it's a natural color.
And the techniques in this piece?
Yeah, so there's a lot of peyote stitch. The neck strap itself is done with herringbone using different sizes of beads. So you get that texture, almost looks like a netting when you look at it, but it is actually herringbone. And then there's these end caps on it that you can kind of see. Those are kind of an unusual shape. Those guys are done with a combination of peyote and herringbone together to get the form. Yeah.
Okay, so you figured out how to blend peyote and herringbone.
Yeah, I do a lot of that in my work, especially these days, like more and more and more over time. I used to do, herringbone or peyote, but now I've kind of brought them together a lot of the time, and they're great for construction and geometric form. So,
It's a beautiful piece.
thank you.
And on the next one, we have a one-of-a-kind corset you
Ah,
made.
yes, my corsets. That kind of is a throwback to having done costume as well. I make the corsets as well as do the beadwork on it. The corsets are pretty like labor intensive in and of their own right. They quite a lot of hours go into making those because they are a lot of different pattern pieces. They're fully boned. They are working with stripes. For anyone who sews, knows that trying to get those all lined up and nice is a challenge too. But I kind of went through like a burlesque period, I guess, where I was trying to do some burlesque costumes. So that's what this comes from. The panels down the front are heavily beaded. You don't really appreciate the detail from the picture, but they are made using antique prosthetic eyes, some doll's eyes in there, and other like floral forms, that sort of thing that are stitched in there. And it is actually a true like hourglass Victorian corset. You can kind of see it right there behind me. Christina was a real sport wearing that because it's not particularly comfortable wearing those hourglass shaped corsets when you're not hourglass shaped. So, but
And I
yeah.
love her fishnet stockings, which, I mean, are rather true, somewhat true to life, in certain quarters.
They are definitely, yeah, and it was perfect with that sort of burlesque, feel. That was her idea. I have to give her full credit for that one. That was her idea
To kind of have holes in the stockings.
yeah.
It adds something, definitely.
Does, it does.
Oh, and so now we're gonna move on to your first, master class, your Wildflowers master class.
Yeah, so
And you launched this in March of 2021, and it lasted 8 weeks. And, can you tell us about the concepts behind it? Just give us a sense of what motivated you to start this?
yeah, so, When COVID hit, it hit like we had lockdown in March of 2020. I wasn't scheduled. I had actually taken a bit of a break and wasn't scheduled to do any traveling or teaching until June, July, I think something like that. And so I was like, "Oh, this is great. I'll just wait till I'll wait it out. In 3 months, it'll be fine, and I'll be able to travel." And then it became very clear that that wasn't going to happen anytime soon. So after panicking a little bit, because it meant I had to like basically reinvent my entire business, I tried to think about ways I could do that. A lot of people at that point were doing Zoom classes. They were kind of like 6-hour Zooms. I knew that I couldn't sit still for that long. I wouldn't be able to do it. So I tried to think about some other alternatives, and I got the idea to do videos. I had never done videos, so that was a huge learning curve. I had a niece who was amazing and taught me a lot about it. And I was able to kind of master that. And I initially used it to teach the classes that I'd committed to. So for the whole year, the first year of COVID, I was supposed to be going out and teaching. So I wanted to find a way that I could meet that commitment, but obviously I couldn't travel. So I taught them for the shops and whatnot that I was supposed to be teaching for. And it was an interesting concept. It was video. So the whole class, all the demos, everything is taught in a video format, which the students get to keep. It goes into a permanent library for them. I use Vimeo as my platform. And then I pair that with a Zoom like Q&A session. I also, for the masterclass, I call them office hours, but basically it's Q&A sessions. So it had sort of a personal element to it. And I found that actually it was really, really effective because people were able to hold on to that video. And when you do a class, it's like 6 hours and you're gone, whereas the video's there forever. So it takes a lot of the pressure off having to learn it all in one day or having to be the person who asks to see the same thing 100 times. Like all of that's eliminated by video. And I just found it was really successful. And so I thought to myself, well, I've always wanted the opportunity to teach longer classes as opposed to like a 1 day class. And so I thought, this actually is finally possible with video. I would be able to work with students for a prolonged period because obviously it wouldn't matter where we were because we're doing it all virtually. So my first one that I did that was sort of in this vein was the Wildflower Master Class, which I launched in 2021. I was working on it all through 2020, trying to make it happen. It was really like a crazy learning curve because I'd never done it before, and I was learning everything. I was learning the video end of it, making a book, all of that. But it was a risk, and a lot of people told me it wasn't going to work. But I decided that I was gonna try it. I had a lot of faith in myself, and I felt like I was just gonna follow my intuition and develop this class that for 8 weeks dealt with different types of structures you could build that were all wildflowers, but also a class that would dive really deep into the creative process, which is something I've never been able to do when I was traveling and teaching.
And so in I think most or all of your master classes, the first week you devote to inspiration, to guiding your students towards finding places where they can feel inspired, whether it's online or in a book or at an actual physical location. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Why you feel that their inspiration is important?
Yeah, I feel like kind of my goal with the class was really to kind of have it be a springboard for people and their own creativity and designs. And I think inspiration is essential because that's sort of the starting point. That's where you get the ideas and you get the motivation and excitement to follow through with the project. And it's also the place you go back to. So if you're having trouble, go back to what inspired you, and then it'll kind of throw you back into it again. So I did do a whole week on inspiration. I did a video field trip, stuff like that, to make it kind of fun. But that really, I feel like that's so important if you're trying to develop as an artist, not just someone who's reproducing a design, but if you want to kind of develop your artistic senses, inspiration is where you start.
So you're not just giving them the literal how-to instructions and the diagrams and the guidance. You're helping them become artists. You're teaching them to crack the code of creativity, as you yourself have put it, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It's trying to give people the tools to do it on their own because I think people they have it in them, and I feel like, for me, there's a lot behind the design work I do, a lot of, history, biology, whatever, and I wanted to be able to share that because that's all the inspiration that starts it, and I think it was one thing that people responded to really well. A lot of people said, "It's so interesting what you've taught us beyond just how to bead," like all of the backdrop, all of the tidbits about wildflowers, things like that. So that was kind of the goal, and it seems to have worked. So, yeah.
Yeah, and this masterclass was very well attended, right? And all of them have been.
They have been, yeah, they really have been, yeah, so it's, encouraging.
So, the next piece is an example of the kind of pieces you show them during the inspirational first week lesson, right? And you teach them how to make these individual components and then put them together according to their own sensibility, their own aesthetic, right?
Exactly, yeah, what the goal was to give them the kind of the tools to make these different types of forms. There were 29 different forms in the first masterclass, but then kind of set them on their way to figure out how they're gonna use those. So it's not a finished piece, but I wanted to show them some of the finished pieces I made with those forms to kind of inspire them and see, like, what the possibilities were. So that one that you see in the picture here is made with black-eyed Susans, or beaded black-eyed Susans, which are one of my favorite flowers, wildflower around here. And they're stitched primarily with peyote stitch. There is some herringbone in there, but you don't see it because it's on the backside. And then these guys have been attached to leather, so they're sewn onto leather, which you don't really see it because it's behind the flowers themselves.
Okay. Beautiful piece.
Mhm.
And week 2, can you tell us about these flowers?
Yeah, so what I did for the first week of master classes inspiration, then the next 6 weeks are different projects. So each week was a different project or grouping of projects. And what I tried to do in Wildflowers is just group it in a way that visually it made sense. So I've done them different ways in the different master classes. But for this, what I did for week 2 was daisy-like wildflowers. So they're not all daisies, obviously, but they're in that family or in that aesthetic. And so what I did too, which I thought would be interesting for people, especially if they're trying to develop their own creativity, is I presented the pieces in the order in which I developed them. So the first piece I did was the daisy itself, and then from there I went on to that gave me the idea to make the blue aster. And so I did encourage them to work through them in the order that they were in because that was reflective of my creative process, and it kind of gives you a sense of the evolution that goes along with
And
that.
do you have samples of these there you could
I
show
do,
us?
yeah, I do, absolutely. Let's see what we got. Well, the very first one was a daisy, um, there, and you can see, again, peyote stitch, the right angle weave. Like I said, it's on the back side there, so you don't really see it. That developed into I did an aster, which are also kind of little blue daisies that we have around here. Then it went into the black-eyed Susan, which you saw in the picture that we were talking about. And then the next one I did, I'm trying to see if I got him here. There is a chicory, which is also a nice one, a nice little daisy form. So you can see they're all kind of in that general vein for that first week. That's what we did. And
And the reason you're putting right angle weave on the back, I think, is to make them easier to stitch onto other structures, right? Because right angle weave gives you open spaces, whereas peyote stitch really doesn't, right?
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, the possibility to build off of right angle weave is there's just
Mm.
more options. So it was great for especially if people wanted to build stems, things like that, which I dealt with later on in the workshop. I got into doing stems and leaves and things like that. So
Right. And week 3.
yeah, so week 3 was round petal flowers. Um, Again, it's just kind of visually different. So this one was really fun, actually. I think this might have been one of my favorite weeks and a popular week amongst the students. But I started with really simple forget me not flowers, which you see all the way kind of to the left in the photograph. And then I kind of developed from there. On the right side of the photograph are wild violets, which are slightly more complex. And then I took that to the next level for me, which was the wild strawberries on the bottom, the white ones, wild strawberry flowers. And then at the top was the buttercup, which I have to say the buttercup is my favorite one for the whole master class. That's the one I like the most. And these are all reflective of Connecticut wildflowers because I went with what I knew and what I had access to. But I did really encourage the students to learn the different shapes and forms. So learn the different possibilities for petal shapes, for centers, for stamen, things like that. And then try to apply those shapes to the wildflowers around them. Because often if you kind of reconfigured the different shapes or changed the color or that kind of thing, they could recreate the ones that they had like in their backyard.
So can you hold some of these up?
Yeah, let's see. We got some of these over here. Ah, I got flowers and beads everywhere. Here's my favorite for the week. There's the buttercup. You can see that.
It's fabulous.
Again, like combination herringbone and peyote stitch on the back. And there is actually a right angle weave part in the center. It's sort of hard to make out in the finished piece, but there is a base there of right angle weave. And let's see, just another one maybe from that week would be the wild violets, which I really like. We have tons of those in my garden, so those are kind of a fun little
They're
shape.
beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah. So it kind of gave the students a sense of like round petals, how to make them, and different flowers that had them. So
And can we see a wild strawberry flower?
yeah, where is my wild
You have one.
strawberry? Yep, I do have one. They're a pile over there. There's wild strawberry, and again, it has that back that's a combination of peyote stitch and herringbone. But I love these guys.
They're beautiful.
Super invasive in the garden, but beautiful.
I wouldn't mind. If they came into my garden, I'd let them stay.
Yes, they're excellent ground cover, so they're good.
Yeah, I could use them. Right, week 4.
Okay, week 4, we did bonnet style flowers, which it was just, again, it's not like a particular grouping. It was just more descriptive of the shape of the flower. It was pretty complex that week because those structures were built basically in a form that wasn't any particular stitch. So it wasn't herringbone, it wasn't peyote, it was more like put the bead where the bead belongs. So I think sometimes people have trouble wrapping their head around that because it's literally like it's like constructing something from bricks or whatever. It's not like a set thread path or anything. But I think people enjoyed that. Once they mastered it, it was one of those ones where it was like, but then once they got it, they were okay. And so we did a couple different ones. We did the birdfoot trefoil, which is the yellow one. We did a lupin or lupine, which is the sort of blue colored one. And then my favorite that week, and I think I have it to show you because it was definitely my favorite, was jewelweed, which is a weed that grows around here. Here's a little flower. You can see it's kind of a funky looking flower. It hangs this way from a stalk that, comes up there. But it was a fun one, really vibrant, and I think people enjoyed it, and definitely a challenging piece because it utilized, again, this not particularly any stitch and some peyote decrease as well to get the shape in it.
And can we see the lupine?
Let me see if I have lupine. I don't know that I have lupine here. I think I do not.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, I do not have my lupine here. Sorry.
Okay, that's all right. All right, week 5.
Week 5. Week 5 was berries. And berries were, that was actually one of the more popular weeks that we did. The colors are really vibrant. The forms are really interesting. Yeah, people just loved that week. And so they were all, a lot of completely different techniques. We started off with the blackberries, which are so like really cute little blackberries. And it was obviously probably the most simple of the forms. But then we went on, we did the pokeweed, which is the one you see in the picture here. It's on the the left-hand side, and that's a sort of more complex using spiral stitch and embellishment. We did also the acorns. The acorns were a lot of fun. People really enjoyed those. Here you can see them. I've attached oak leaves to them because that would have been appropriate for acorns. We don't actually get into those until the next week, but I did kind of combine some of the weeks together too, so people could see the options for bringing different things together. Sumac berries, which are the red ones at the center of the image here, those guys are they're really fun. Again, it's like really heavy branch fringe. It's kind of hard to see what it is, but that's how you get the structure there. And then the last of the berries I did was bittersweet, which are on the right hand side in the image. And those guys are beautiful, vibrant, highly invasive again, but a great little one to have as well. So
And
yeah.
could you show us some of these
Yeah,
prototypes you made?
definitely, definitely. I think I'm pretty well equipped with my berries. So there are some pokeweed, actually, which I did multiple of them, and I hung them. This is kind of like an interesting little stand. Normally, it would be displayed with a dome over it, but the dome's pretty reflective, so I've taken it off at the moment. But this is how they occur in nature. They're suspended that way, and they're so cool. They have the magenta stalks just like that. So there's some pokeweed. Um, Blackberries again, just tiny little blackberries. Those are very sweet. The acorns, got the acorns here. Those guys.
Hold them up higher, higher.
Oh, sorry, yeah. In the camera would be good. Yeah, these guys you can see, it's interesting in the photograph, it's hard to really understand the dimensionality of it. I think it's nice to be able to show you guys on the camera here. And you can see the oak leaves in there too that I added on in the following week. And
Just fantastic.
thanks.
Beautiful.
And then my bittersweet. Look at my bittersweet. I don't know what my sumac is. Oh, I see my sumac. It's behind me. But there's the bittersweet. Herringbone for the stalk and peyote stitch, for the little, they're like pods or husks that open up. And then there is my sumac, which again, like I said, is just really, really heavy branch fringe with drops to get that. But that's a great one too. It's a
That's
nice.
beautiful. So much texture, so much depth.
Oh, they're so great. I love them. Love
I
them.
do too. They're lifelike,
They are.
almost better than life. All
They
right,
are.
week 6.
So week 6 was leaves and stems, blades of grass too. I incorporated in that. It was sort of the extra stuff beyond the flowers because if you're doing especially sculptural stuff, you're going to want to know how to do some of these things as well. You're going to want to know how to take the forms and add a stem or make an appropriate leaf shape to go with them. So that week was completely dedicated to doing different forms of leaves and then stems. We talked about, we talked earlier about the right angle weave on the back of those flowers. That was perfect to build a stem off of. So I got into how to do that in this week.
Okay, so leaf components in this week.
Yeah.
And week 7.
Week 7 was that was sort of the grand finale of beading. It was I called it complex wildflowers, and what it was is it was these much more elaborate wildflowers that were built using a bunch of the different techniques and forms, and then constructing them into the full botanical form. So it was a really fun week. It was definitely, I would say, probably the most challenging week as far as the structures that we built, but it was a great way to kind of bring all the information together and just make these more elaborate forms for people. So.
And these look like really complex structures. Can you show us some samples?
Yeah, let me show you. I have a couple different ones here. The kind of the simplest one we started with, which is the water lily flower. So that's pretty basic, made with a bunch of petals. But after that, it got quite a bit more complex. We did at one point we did thistles, and so those guys were kind of fun. I just put mine onto a wooden stand to display them. But these guys are done with their sort of peyote stitch in the stem. There's peyote stitch underneath with a lot of embellishment with size 8 beads on the surface to create this texture, just fringing up at the top. So it's a combination of different stitches, but really fun forms. And I think pretty representative of thistles too, if you're familiar with them.
Very much so.
Yeah, they're fun. And then another one that I really liked was the columbine flower, which is kind of interesting. These are beautiful. They look like flowers that fairies would make or have. They're very unique in their form. And so I used different techniques. I built petals using the technique we had learned earlier for round petaled. But then this structure here, which is really, it is actually, it is what it looks like on a columbine. It's really unusual shaped flower. This was done again with combination peyote stitch and herringbone to get that shape. And then I built, there's a stem here that's built with herringbone, and then some fringing on the front side here too to get the stamen. So a combination of a lot of different stitching to come together to create one flower.
Well, yeah, and adding in a lot of engineering, or architecture, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And, the same brilliant structure you get with your, eye creatures, gang of creatures
Mhm.
with the spikes coming out of them. You're a brilliant structuralist, a brilliant structure designer, engineer, architect. I mean, not so many people have this gift, to be able to think in 3 dimensions and put forms together so beautifully. And in this case, so realistically.
Well, there's so much math in nature when you break it
Mhm.
down that it sort of is like the inevitable once you start to get into reproducing it. And I was blessed to have a mathematician father too, so I have a love of math as well as bead.
Okay.
So,
All right. Well, it shows, and you do it beautifully. All right.
thank
So now, week 8. What would week 8 have been about here
Week
for
8,
this class?
what we did is we ended up with week 8 doing, creativity, which was really sort of what it was building to, like, trying to help people understand, like, what is involved in being creative. Creativity is a lifestyle, not just a thing, it's a lifestyle, and how to embrace that. And just think creatively about everything, not just beadwork, but about everything around you, and I really tried to encourage people to do that and then take what they had learned and apply that creativity and make their own designs. And people did. It was amazing. I had a lot of students after the fact sent me photographs of what they had done with the different pieces they made or how they took the techniques and made totally new things. But it was really amazing. It was really great.
And there's
So
a book that goes with this master class, right? With each of your master classes, you publish a book.
I do, yeah. So this is the Wildflower book that I did. It's a big one. It's like
Can you
180
hold it
some
up?
pages. Yeah,
Hold it up.
about
There
180
you go.
pages.
How many pages?
180 plus.
Wow. And
So
this you publish it yourself, you design it yourself.
I do. It's exclusive for the master class, so it's not distributed outside of the class. And it's the manual, so it has all the information as far as the illustrated instructions. You can open it up, give you a sense of those. There's all these illustrations and whatnot, but
Mhm.
there's also a lot of like inspirational images, things about inspiration, things about wildflowers. It was my first time ever doing like a full book. I had done books for publishers, but I'd never done it myself. And so when you write for a publisher, like basically you write it, sometimes you provide photographs for the illustrations, but you don't do like the whole thing. So for this, I was fortunate enough to have Melissa Shippey who did my illustration work for me, but I did layout, everything that went into making a book. And so that was again, it was like just like with the videos, it was quite a learning curve to do that the first time.
And
So
I meant to show your 2012 book, which came out before you started doing these master classes, which you did write for a publisher, I think, right? And it has
actually,
your eye flowers on the front cover. This is one of the most beautiful books devoted to beadwork that I've ever seen, and I have many. It's full of images of your work and some inspirational pieces, beautiful pieces you've designed, and also your philosophy of life and your philosophy of design, and talking somewhat about what inspires you and how to draw from what inspires you. So is this still in print? Can people still get this book?
yeah, it's a print on demand, and you can get it from Blurb,
Okay.
blurb.com. They do print on demand. It's nice actually because you can get it hardcover, softcover, like whatever you want as far as that goes.
Okay, so I'll put a link in the show notes. And, I do have a question. Okay, so you went to all this effort to launch your first masterclass. It took you many months to get it ready. You had to learn things you never knew about. Weren't you a little bit nervous when you went to launch? You had to buy beads. You had to stock up on all kinds of different beads and have parts ready and get the book ready and the shipping materials and the packaging. You designed custom packaging yourself. And then you had to pack all the kits. Weren't you just a little bit nervous before you hit publish on this whole masterclass concept?
I was, and I have to say a lot of people said that there wasn't gonna be an interest, or that it was too long a class. Because it was a long class and included all the kits, it was an expensive class. So I but I do trust myself. I found that, like, throughout business, if I go with what my instincts tell me, I'm okay. It's better to listen to myself than others. But I did get a lot of people who were like, with good intention, but I don't know if it's time for that yet.
Mhm.
And it was, like you mentioned, it was a massive time investment. I mean, I gave like every hour of the day starting, I think I started it like August of 2020 and I launched it in March of 2021. But every like waking moment was dedicated to it. Huge amount of money went into the kits. I mean, it's a massive expense. There were 29 kits per student for the class. Plus, I created the books as an effort in creating them, but then publishing, it's not inexpensive to publish books as well. So it was a huge investment there, and I also had sort of a hiccup. I was about halfway through the class as far as the filming went. Had a problem with my computer with backing it up. Took it into the Apple Store. They were like, "We have to wipe it. It'll be fine. All your videos are in the cloud." Um, and it turned out my videos were not in the cloud, and I lost basically half of the workshop. So I ended up having to refilm the entire first half and re-edit all the videos, which it was rough. Although I think in the long run, I'd learned so much doing it the first time. It made them better, when I actually did them for the class. So, but that was not a good day when that happened. But I just like I stuck with it. I was gonna do it.
Mhm.
So, and then I did launch it in March, and yeah, it worked out
And
pretty.
how did the launch go?
Well, it was funny. I was so nervous about it. Obviously, I had so much at stake that I had 60 spots in it. And I was like, okay, we're going to go with 60. Everyone said that's too many, but I was like, no, I'm going to go with 60. I was so nervous, I decided to launch it at like bedtime so that I wouldn't sit there and just watch it. Of course, instead, you lie in bed thinking about what's happening. But I did launch about 9 o'clock at night. And finally, I 1 or 2 in the morning, I was lying in bed, still awake, and I said, "I gotta go look because I gotta make sure a few of the spots sold because, whatever." So I open it up, and sure enough, like 50 plus of the spots sold at that point. It was amazing. And then by the next morning, I think we were totally sold out. So it was such like like, "Oh, I did the right thing," kind of moment. So rewarding. I can't even tell you how rewarding it is.
No, you must have been overjoyed and relieved.
Yes. Yeah. Like I said, there was so much at stake there. And I thought, oh God, if this flops, I mean, I'm so
Mm.
in the hole, like financially, time wise, everything. So,
But it became an incredible success within 5 hours. Okay, it took you 5 hours to mostly sell out, and then
mhm.
you were completely sold out a few hours after that. I mean, that's proof of concept, and that's just an incredible accomplishment and a victory. But
Yeah,
then you had to ship everything, right?
I did. Yeah.
Okay, that's kind of a tall order. Now, how did you let students know about this? I think you sent out a trailer onto YouTube or something. Can you tell us about that? And also, after you tell us a little bit about it, I would love to see the trailer that you put on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to get the word out because basically I wasn't teaching, I wasn't doing anything other than building the masterclass. So I wanted people, first of all, to know that I was still here and I hadn't forgotten. But I thought it would kind of get the word out. People could think about it. It was going to be an investment for students to take this because it's like, I mean, the intent was to create something that was like a semester at Bead College. So I wanted people to have plenty of time to know what it was, what it involved. so I did put out trailers. I collected a lot of people wrote to me and said, "Hey, can you send me a notice when you open the registration?" So I did that, and it seemed to work. Yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll show you that trailer right now.
Thank you.
Okay, so when you're looking for your inspiration, there is no better place than the natural world to start. I use that as sort of a springboard for what I do. I do take some artistic license with the work that I do, but I love to start with the flowers themselves. So I'm going to take you on a little tour of my part of the world, because those are going to be the flowers that I'm going to be using as the inspiration and the pieces that I'm going to be teaching you for this project. They are Black-Eyed Susans, or Rudbeckia, it's known as, and these are one of my favorites, actually. The color is just fantastic on them. It is actually one that's taken me a long time to find one in beads that matches it, but there is a color out there which will work, so we'll be using that in one of our projects for this workshop. But
That's an incredible trailer. It's beautiful, and I see why people wanted to sign up. Now, you designed that yourself and made it yourself, right?
I did, yeah. I hadn't had much experience prior, but I felt like it was a good way to convey, to advertise it. And I think to this day I still do trailers for all the master
Mhm.
classes, because I do really think it gives people more of a sense of what it is than just a written description. Videos are they speak if a photo speaks 1,000 words and video speak a million. So it's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well said. I really want to give people a sense of how many different areas of effort you had to master in order to bring one master class to fruition, right? Like when I was going through the materials you sent me, I came up with 21 different areas of effort, but I know I was short at least one because I forgot the field trips. For every master class, you film a field trip of yourself going somewhere to look at something related to the master class, right?
Yeah.
But I'd like to go over this because, the price point for these master classes, as you said, is kind of high from one point of view, but they're about $1,000 each or so right now. But when you look at how much effort you've had to put into this, not to mention all the materials, I really think that, Laura, you could be charging a lot more, You've got the research to begin with. You've got the lesson plans, the curriculum. As you said, you intend these to be the equivalent, in the beadwork world of a university course, a semester long. You've got to come up with the kit design, the packaging, the concepts. And for the Wildflowers Masterclass, you said each student got 29 separate packets of beads. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
And if we multiply 29 by 60, I did that once, tend to come out, I can't, let me do it right now.
It was a
Because
lot.
just to drive home the point that, really what you're getting, what a student gets in for one of your master classes is not only a lot of you and your talent, but all of your effort for months and months designing the courses and bringing them, packaging them and presenting them and teaching things effectively. So what was that, 29 separate
29 times 60, yeah.
times 60, 1,740
Wow,
packages of beads that you yourself assembled, right?
I did. Yep, and it
Okay, that's only one aspect, right?
yep.
You had to record the videos multiple times. You had to teach yourself how to become a videographer, in effect, and how to get the camera focused on the beads, to show them clearly. You put your videos on Vimeo, right? And
Mhm.
then you send your students a link to the masterclass on Vimeo. So you had to learn how to do all of that. You had to post things to your website. You had to post the masterclass portal, the ordering buttons and everything. And then what else do you offer that I haven't mentioned that's on this slide here?
Ooh, what else do I have? I do have, these sort of private, Zoom, I call them office hours, which I offer a couple times a week. Depends how big the class is, but for the bigger classes, sometimes I'm doing it 3 and 4 times a week. I'll do a 2-hour session. I can do 2 hours on Zoom and still sit still, but I can't do more than that. But I do 2-hour sessions. I change the times up. Sometimes they're in the morning, sometimes they're in, the night because I have students all over the world. But that's been a great way to like put a face to it. And it's an opportunity for people to come ask questions. If they're having trouble, I can help them out. And a lot of times it's just people come and hang out and they'll bead. And it's a good place for the students to network with each other, meet each other, and talk about beads and other things that are going on in the bead world. So that's been
So, in
really,
addition to these 21 different areas of effort I identified, you're also creating communities.
I am.
And I think you create Facebook groups, right? For each masterclass, you create a Facebook group so students can go in and chat with each other and find community there too. And, maybe find answers to questions, post their pieces, whatever, share ideas. And those Facebook groups last forever, right? You keep them going for years.
Yeah, they're still going, and they're still posting. It's amazing. I still get some of the very first, 2021 masterclass students are still posting in the Facebook. They're closed, so it's only the people in the class who see it. I wanted to give people sort of a safe space to work in. I feel like when you start getting into creativity and making your own artwork, it's very important to keep yourself in a safe space initially.
Mhm.
It leaves you very vulnerable. But again, the importance of creating a community is also there. That's more particular to dealing with that as opposed to just doing, beaded patterns. So
So a lifestyle, as what creativity or beading is a lifestyle, is what they're being indoctrinated into, but they may not know it. But
they don't know
and
yet.
they love it, right? And then you also sell optional extra components on your website just for the students in your master classes. They have a special private area on your website where they can buy very rare components, right?
Yeah, what happened is, it wasn't so much a thing in Wildflowers because we were using just basically beads and stones. It was pretty simple materials. But then when we got into the eye flower, which was the next one that I did, there was stuff that people are just having a really hard time getting. So I thought, why don't I source that for them and create almost like a gift shop for the students themselves? So I created this hidden link within the website where any of the workshop students can go and shop for materials. When I have a new post a bunch of new stuff, I let them know that it's there. But it's worked out really nicely because it's allowed them, to to get additional items if they needed
Mm,
them.
okay. And now it's time for your second masterclass, the Eyeflowers
Yeah.
masterclass.
Indeed, indeed. So this was like a really it was a really fun one. It was shorter. It was only 3 weeks as opposed to 8 weeks. So it was shorter. It was a less expensive masterclass. But it was very it was such a like stretch for me. I've been doing these figures forever, but I never wanted to teach them. People were always asking me to teach them. But they're like my babies. They're like my creative babies. And I didn't want to break them down into step by step instructions because that wasn't really how I made them. They were all different. I worked through them as I went. And so, again, people kept asking me, but I was like, there's no way I can do it. I just can't. There isn't a pattern. It can do it in a day. But then I thought, well, let's give it a go and try it. And this was a much more open class. It gave people very basic techniques, but how they put those together was really up to them. I think it was more open than Wildflowers was in that sense. So I was nervous. I was nervous that it was going to be something that people weren't going to go for, but I was also nervous that it was going to be very hard for me to teach it because it's much harder to teach that way than to teach like a beaded, like a straight up pattern. Like that's actually quite easy to teach because you have your pattern and you're teaching that. When you're doing more conceptual stuff and helping everybody with different projects, it's a lot more challenging as a teacher. But I like it more. That's more fun for me to do that. So when we went into it, I really wasn't sure. I ended up with 100 people in the first session, which was like amazing. And I did a really nice, I can show you a really nice book for that class. It was a hardcover that I did. That was actually, it was nice because it's a lay flat one. So you can actually see if I open it up, it lies flat and you can work out of it as opposed to being bound in the traditional fashion. But it's got a lot of information about the different techniques that go into eye flowers, but not how to assemble them. So it teaches you maybe how to bezel an eye and how to make petals, but then I really encourage people to take that and put those pieces together like in a way that they wanted to, and to kind of like apply their own creative vision. And they did it. Oh my God, they did it. Like people did amazing work came out of that. People were sending me pictures, beautiful stuff posted on the Facebook page, which was really exciting. And so again, that was like really rewarding for me because it's a way I've wanted to teach for my whole teaching career, but just the structure of workshops, when I was doing traveling, I just couldn't, it wasn't an option. So that was really great. And it was neat because what I found is, from the first to this one, and actually throughout all the master classes, a lot of them are repeat customers. So students I had in the first one, the majority of them took the Eyeflower master class, and then I would say a huge number of those also took the oceans. So it just kind of kept going down the line, and it's great because we really have created this like awesome community of creative beaters, which has carried on. And also, it kind of makes me feel like, okay, I'm on the right track if people are coming back for more. So, yeah,
Well, you trusted your instincts, and
I,
it really worked.
I did.
So week one again was inspiration, and so you would have shown them pieces like these eye flower hair sticks.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, let me put up that picture right now. The eye flowers are the hair sticks are interesting. I hadn't done anything in the way of hair sticks before doing this actual pair that you see, but it was a fun thing to show the students because it gave them ideas outside of the sculpture. Because I think most people just associate it with the sculptures that I made, but there was a lot of other options beyond that, and so that these were kind of one of them. Had to help people with sourcing, finding hair sticks and things like that, but we were able to do it, and a few of them actually did hair sticks out of the class. So, it was
So there
really,
was no resistance to the concept of prosthetic eyes, or doll eyes. There's no resistance to this rather, unusual, alternative concept of using eyes, eye motifs, and eye forms in their work. No resistance. In fact, I really liked it.
I liked it. Yeah, we used doll's eyes for this one. They're spherical in shape, which are really the most challenging of the eyes that I use. So I wanted to pick the hardest one to teach in the class. And actually, in the first week, we did get into we did inspiration, talked about surrealist art a little bit, and then we got into just how to bezel those eyes because they are a challenge. So I wanted to teach that. And again, that's something I never could have taught except on video. So that was sort of the first week of it. Second week, we talked all about different petals and all those kind of forms that can be incorporated into it. And then the third week, I got into like, how do you link these together, ways to attach petals, but all of it was very open. It wasn't telling you exactly how to do things. It was just like, these are options, you go. And, they did, they really did.
And in terms of, the kits, you offered them 3 different colorways they could choose from, and the first was the blue and orange colorway or color palette.
Yeah, that's what I decided for this. What I would do is, I wanted to encourage people to kind of put together colors in their own way, but I also know it's hard, and it's sort of a point of uh, uh, insecurity for a lot of people is choosing colors. So I wanted to give them a palette that I knew would work, but then say, hey, working with this palette, you put it together the way you want to put it together. I'm not telling you how to put it together. So they were offered 3 different palettes. And then they could choose either, I think I had brown, blue, and green eyes, and so they could choose their eye color and their palette color, and it included the one eye with it. So the one that you see here, this is the blue and orange one, which was one of the 3 that I did. And again, these are not representative of everything that you get in your kit. It's just to see the palette in action, to see like what it looks like when you actually put it together rather than just seeing bags of beads. And so there was, the eye was included. There were a few other bits and pieces that were included. And then I really strongly encourage people to bring stuff in from their own stash, be it seed beads or other elements, that they wanted to bring in.
And they could buy extra eyes on your website and extra parts if they wanted to.
Yeah, exactly. And then I had extra palettes too, because some of them, wanted to try out the other palettes. So
So the next palette is the green and ivory color palette.
it is, yeah. And again, the same thing. The piece that you see here is just kind of intended to show people what it looks like in action. It's not necessarily what you'll end up doing, but at least you can see how the colors play off each other.
Just beautiful.
Thanks.
And the third was the red and green color palette.
Yes, the red and green. And I'm trying to think. I think the blue and orange was the most popular, followed by the red and green, and then
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, the red and green, again, like with this is an example. The eyes in this one are doll's eyes. They're not representative of the ones that they got. These are kind of wacky resin ones with red centers. But again, I just really wanted people to see like the possibilities. And again, the thing that's funny with beads is like you can look at them in the bags and they look one way, and then you put them together and you're like, what happened? So I wanted them to have at least the confidence to know that it would work, as a color palette to start.
So you launched this. You put 100 spaces you offered 100 spaces for this masterclass. Did this also sell out in 5 hours?
It sold, yeah, not quite as quickly, but I would say the 100 spots sold out in, I don't know, a day, maybe a day and a half. So,
Wow.
and
Wow.
subsequently, I've done more sessions of it, and I think overall there's been like 200 people who've taken it, which is pretty awesome. So
Very awesome. Fantastic. I'd love to see the trailer for this one.
indeed, let me put it on for you.
Thank you. Wow, that's also fantastic. It's just so creative, you know?
Thank
And
you.
it's all your idea, your execution, and your mastery.
Oh, thank you. Well, I have that artist thing where like we need to make everything in our lives like a work of art. So it's not just my works of art, but like my classes have to be a work of art. Everything has to be a work of art.
And
Uh,
it shows, and the response, really validates your way of doing things.
yeah.
Being true to yourself, and sharing your mastery in ways people really relate to and benefit from, and can move on from, can learn how to be creative and then take that creativity with them down the road.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
wonder how many artists you're giving birth to in these master classes.
I hope many, many, many.
Yeah,
It's
many, many.
It's one I think I think everybody's creative. They just don't a lot of times people don't know how to access that, like, and there are ways to access it, but it's effort, it's hard, you have to work at it, just like
Mhm.
anything else. And so I wanted to give people I felt like, in our, industry, everything really has shifted over the years very much to a beating to a specific pattern, to the point where it has to be just like the sample, and I really wanted people to kind of try to break away from that because I think if you can think more creatively, it's just I don't know, it's just better. It's better. You can do more. So, yeah.
Yeah, you can do more. The one mindset is a kind of a literal mindset, which is very effective. It's very pragmatic, and that's why it's so pervasive. But this other mindset, you combine a literal mindset with a more creative, open, flowing mindset. So you're pairing these two things together, which is freeing students to go on and do their own thing, so to speak, in the future.
Exactly.
Well,
Exactly.
I think it's very cool.
Thank you.
So your third masterclass was the Oceans Masterclass, and you launched that in May of 2022. How did that go?
That went really well. Just like the first one. It was bigger. I did 100 spots in that, and again, that one sold out within a couple of days. Um, it was something that, the idea came from some students. One in particular was like, do oceans. And oceans made a lot of sense in terms of the colors in the ocean as a source of inspiration, really interesting forms. So I decided I was going to do similar to what I'd done with the wildflowers. Which was to do a couple different elements each week, totaling 25 all in all sea creatures, and then encourage people to take those and do what they wanted to with them. So, yeah, so it was sort of similar structure, but different theme.
And the piece we're seeing here is your Nautilus sculpture, and that was part of the inspiration you gave them in week one, right?
It was, yeah. I like to do some pieces of my own just to kind of share some ideas, with the students. I'll show them throughout, but for me, it's kind of fun to do that on the front end to get myself excited and thinking about the class. So I'll do a couple pieces like that, as well as continue to work throughout the class on my own pieces, but particularly the front end, it's nice. So.
And week two, these look like corals.
Yeah, week 2, we did coral and seaweed. So they were just kind of different sea floor forms. In there, you can see on the right is the kelp, which is done with herringbone and peyote stitch. There's some red coral in there, herringbone and branch fringe for that one. There's some sea sponges, tubular sea sponges. Those are the purple ones at the top there. Those guys are done with herringbone, or not herringbone, with peyote stitch. It's only peyote stitch. And then there's a red seaweed, which is an interesting sculptural piece, a different type of seaweed that, again, that's done with peyote stitch. And then I have at the bottom, it's called Favia coral. It's also sometimes called brain coral. There's these small little organisms that clump together and create what's a bigger, what appears to be a bigger coral, but it's actually made of all these teeny tiny organisms. So I did those as well that week.
Could you show us some of the prototypes you beaded?
Yes, where is my oceans? Yeah, here's people love the kelp. It's just really nice. component, and it's fun because you can see it's very dimensional. When you see it on camera like this, you can appreciate it a little bit more. So that was very popular. Red seaweed, again, very dimensional, kind of learning about how using different sizes you can create that dimensionality. My little red coral, really cute.
Yeah,
So
these are just wonderful,
yeah,
wonderful, so lifelike, you know?
yeah, they're really fun. And then here's another one too that I can show you from that week. Is the tube sponges as well. So yeah, really fun colors, fun structures. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And did students like this week?
Students did. Yeah, they liked it. Was fun. They seemed to enjoy all the different weeks. After this first week, I did everything by different phylums. So the phylums are kind of subdivision under kingdom, but much larger than species. But these groupings of organisms. So I decided to organize it that way. So then every week thereafter was a different phylum that we did.
Okay. And so week 3 is a phylum.
It is. It's
Which
uh,
one?
Echinodermata, or the echinoderms.
Okay.
Um, and it was fun because this is again where I like to introduce a little additional information beyond beading, stuff about the creatures in the ocean themselves. Because I'm very interested in biology. I enjoy
Mhm.
biology, so I was able to bring a bunch of that into this. But the defining thing with the echinoderms is they have fives. So like starfish come in 5 points or multiples thereof. We did sand dollars. You can see in the picture, it's on the left-hand side. They have a 5-pointed pattern. The one at the top is a crinoid, which is an ancient creature, but it's still in the oceans these days as well. And then I did a couple different versions of urchins. There's one that's sort of the upper right. That guy is sort of a spiny sea urchin with fairly large spines. And then the two below that were sort of a stylized sea urchin. And I tried to, in this class, kind of show some options as far as taking a form and stylizing it rather than just reproducing it, as is, but to add a little spin to it.
I love how you brought the daggers, dagger beads into
The urchins. Yeah,
the sea urchin. Can you show us the
yeah,
sea urchin and the echinoderm? Show us all of these actually, if you have them.
definitely. Here are the sea urchins.
Wow.
They're really fun. They were made with 11s and then these etched daggers. And they move these daggers, which is true to life of sea urchins. They kind of move across the floor of the ocean. So those guys were a lot of fun. Herringbone, basically, in those. Other things. Where are some of my other forms? I have creatures all over the place. It's just a matter of locating them. Um, Hmm. Oh, here we go. Here's a sand dollar. So
Okay.
that's actually, I would have to say that's probably my favorite piece of the whole workshop is the sand dollar. And then starfish. So those are kind of fun
Wow.
too. Starfish are made with it's a combination of herringbone and peyote stitch to get the structure. I do a lot of that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, and those are just some of them. Here's the stylized urchin. That's what I was going to show you as well. So you can see
Oh, fantastic. Is there a stone in there?
there is, yeah, there's a chaton inside, and then
Okay.
it's just, a kind of reminiscent of a sea urchin in its
Yeah,
shape.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Just amazing. Is the echinoderm there somewhere?
Oh, the crinoid?
The crinoid, excuse me, the crinoid.
Yeah, no, I don't have my crinoids here. They're the only one that week that's not
That's
here.
all right. That's all
Yeah.
right. No matter, no matter. All right, week 4.
Week 4 was Nidaria, which is an interesting phylum. It starts with a C, actually. It's like a silent C and Nidaria. But those are basically jellyfish and anemones, and that phylum has bioluminescence in a lot of it, which is really interesting. And I wanted to figure out a way that I could incorporate that because it's such a distinguishing element of that group of creatures. So Toho makes really great glow in the dark beads that they'll charge up and actually glow in the dark, or they are blacklight reactive. So if you shine a black light on them, you can see what they look like. But so each of the 4 projects that week did have the glow in the dark beads in it. And if you look here at the picture on the right-hand side, you can see that jellyfish with the glowing beads in it. It's that one's photographed under a black light to kind of give you a sense of it. And then on the left-hand side are all 4 of the projects that week that we did. So
And you took these photos. These look like professional photos, but I believe you took them yourself.
I'm not a professional photographer, but I'm working on it, and, I try to, sometimes it's, it's great to get, I mean, the professionals are absolutely amazing, but sometimes it's just a matter of time. I can't quite organize getting stuff shipped out and everything, so I've been trying to learn a little bit in my photo tent, see what I can do, so.
And could you show us some of these creatures?
Yeah, definitely. Where are my Nadaria? I think they might be over here. Yes, they are. Move things around a bit. Here is that jellyfish that you see, that's shown under the black light. He's also, looks like this when he's not under black light. It's got a cool little cap on it that's made with, it's herringbone, peyote stitch, some of just like shoving beads where they need to go, and these cool little, curly Q tentacles. There's, also another jellyfish here, which is, they're called moon jellyfish, and they're clear in the water. I went with a light blue color for when I made it.
Moon,
But
moon jellyfish, you said.
yeah, moon jellyfish. They don't really sting, actually. It's kind of nicer in that regard. But they're
Mm,
kind of an interesting shape, and it was just an opportunity to teach a different form. So we had the 2
mm.
jellyfish, and then we did the anemones too. One of them, this is sort of a larger anemone, and it's got really cool piece down in the bottom there. It's, you can see the depth in it, which is typical of anemones. They have different heights. And so this one had a glass cabochon, and it's sort of like the Venetian glass with gold foiling in the bottom. And then the other one that we did was, this little. It kind of was to, give some ideas in the realm of embroidery. These guys were stitched down to leather, but it's like a little grouping of small anemones, and they kind of vary in height, you can see. And then in the center is a mother of pearl cabochon. So
They're beautiful.
thanks.
Week 5.
Ooh, week 5. Week 5, we did the mollusks. Mollusks. I have trouble saying that sometimes. um, but that's a really interesting group and kind of diverse. There's a lot of different creatures in mollusks. Mollusks. But first one is the squid. And squids are, they're just a lot of fun. They're kind of funny looking creatures. They have 8 legs, so we had to work with the number 8 to get this guy to work. He's all done basically in herringbone, and he's got that little typical, pointed tail there, and then all the tentacles which come down, and the mouth or the beak or whatever would be in there.
Wow.
I used the nail heads for the eyes
Mm.
for it too, so it was kind of fun.
He's just brilliant.
Yeah, he was a fun
Just
one. He was a fun little creature, but we had some great ones that week. The first real embroidery piece that I brought into any of my master classes was, this one here. It's the scallop.
Mhm.
The scallop is, I work on leather, which is different than a lot of the embroiderers. They'll work on, stiff stuff or, some kind of textile, whereas I work on leather. So I wanted to be able to teach some of that because it has different issues when you're working with leather. So I was able to incorporate that in this week, which was nice. There's a sea slug, and that guy, he's here, is really kind of cool too. He's an interesting mollusk, and he is also, this is actually the real colors that they come in. They come in a
Mm.
lot of different colors, but that is based on a real one. There's a nautilus form in there, which was, actually very popular. People like the nautilus. You can see that there, and it's a real nautilus shell, and then it's tentacles are created on there to look like the actual
And
creature.
you've used the graduated pearls. What kind of pearls are those?
Yeah, so the big ones are real freshwater pearls. They're like button pearls, that are
Yeah.
center drilled, so they're kind of like funny squished shape. And then along the top where you see the smaller ones, I ended up going with the Austrian crystal pearls. They're 2 millimeter, and it's just really hard to find consistent, nice pearls in the natural pearl world. So those are great and they work nicely. But I kind of like doing the larger size and then tapering off to smaller.
Mhm.
So,
It's
yeah.
very elegant. It's a very beautiful look.
Thank you.
And the
Thanks.
2 small spirals on the bottom?
Yeah, so those were, they're sea snails, but they're stylized. I was talking earlier about how I like to do some stylized stuff, and, that's I'm gonna hold them up so you can see them. They're made with some really lovely, cubic zirconia cup chain in there, and so you can see, you can see that they're very, very deco in their aesthetic, but yeah, that was kind of to give it people an idea of how you could do something that was reminiscent, but not an exact reproduction of the creature.
And how you could integrate cup chain, that's rare.
Yeah, I love cup chain. Yeah, really good. So
It just adds a little bit of sparkle and different texture.
it does. Yeah,
It's
it does.
beautiful.
It's a nice thing for both embroidery and for woven work to be able to
Mm.
incorporate that. So
Okay, week 6.
week 6 was the crustaceans, and the crustaceans are, crabs, lobsters, that kind of thing. So we did, that week we did a crab, a hermit crab. Those guys live in their little shells. They're interesting crab. They move in and out of different shells depending on, what size they are. Basically, as they grow, they move into a different shell. So it did come with its shell, but you could switch it as well. He wasn't stuck in there. And, yeah, and then the other kind of similar to that was the lobster that we did. I did a blue lobster because they actually do exist, but they're pretty rare. So I thought it would be a kind of a fun way to introduce people to rare blue lobsters. Um, so that's why he's in blue. but those guys, those were quite popular. Those guys, because they're just if I hold one up, you can see they're quite little. So they're little guys. But I think people sometimes it's nice just to do something that you can whip up relatively quickly too. So
Mhm,
I
mhm.
enjoyed that.
Again, with the daggers for claws, I think it's brilliant.
Yes, exactly. And then
Very precious.
the last one was the crustaceans was the shrimp, and that was an embroidery piece again, and, again, the cup chain in that. But that was just to give people a sense of, embroidery on leather, but also this is the kind of embroidery that I would do on, like a garment or on a purse, something like that. And then these bits in the tail here, are actually built separately and then stitched on, which is something I do a lot with my embroidery too. I'll build components and stitch it on rather than build it right off the leather. So,
And
yeah.
you offer this embroidery, sample because people were asking you, to show them how to do bead embroidery, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I listen to what people want and I try to
Yeah,
meet
yeah,
the
you respond, yeah,
requests. Yeah, yeah.
they're amazing.
Thanks.
Week 7?
Week 7 is mythical sea creatures, which I wanted to, of course, because with oceans you can't deny the history of and the myth of the water. So I chose 3 to do. I did a a mermaid on the right hand side. So again, that's another embroidered piece there. I used some kind of different beads in it, some nail heads, some dragon scale beads. But again, it's all embroidery technique. At the top center is the kraken. Kraken's a sort of giant squid, evil giant squid in sea myth. And then the other thing was the sea serpent. So the sea serpent you see there on the left-hand side. So
And could we see some of these?
you can, let's see, mermaid first. I'm going to show you her face because she's got it's a carved bone face. It's very sort of peaceful. I came from Bali, but you can't really see it in the picture. So I'm going to just show you that. You can see all the embroidery and then it's finished off nicely on the back side. I do a peyote stitch border on my embroidery. It's basically a row of embroidery and then I peyote stitch off of it so it covers any sewn edge that you have, that you see from the
Hmm,
back side.
fabulous.
Let's
Love
see.
it.
Our Kraken, there he is. He's kind of a lot of fun. He's a neat little guy, and I used teacup beads for his tentacles. So those worked
It's very
perfect.
realistic looking, even
Yes,
though it's a mythical creature, it looks real.
yeah, and he's got his giant, squid eyes there
Oh,
attached.
awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And then the last one was the sea serpent, and I found these really cool fabricated heads that are like dragon heads or sea serpent heads. So I was able to incorporate that into a piece, and the body is a combination of really mostly herringbone, a little bit of peyote stitch in there, and then I use these interesting spike beads for the back of him.
So for this masterclass, you had to source at least 100 of these dragon heads, right? Where did they come from? Online?
Yeah, I seek out people online or often, having gone to the Tucson shows for so many years, I have like people I can reach out to who have different things. And it's one of the real huge challenges with the master classes when I'm designing, like once I start in and I realize there's some component that's going to be sort of unusual, I really have to go out and buy it then and there, because often if I leave it, then later on I go and try to get it and I can't acquire it. So
Right. So your inventory for the master classes is really pretty substantial.
it is, yeah, because everything is done, kits are made and boxed before I even open it, like, before the registration starts. I have to for my own sanity, if nothing else, I have to have everything, like, lined up in the hall ready to ship out the day that I open the
Mhm.
registration. So
And there was a book for this class, wasn't there?
there was, yeah, here's my oceans book. See if I can hold it up so you can see it. There it is. So again, another another lengthy book. I think it was shorter. This was only 150 pages. But again, it's the same sort of thing. All the really awesome illustrations, thanks to Melissa. Some information about the different phylum in it.
Mm.
Inspiring photographs, a little bit of everything in there. So so that was my second big book that I was doing for a master class. So
And the trailer for this one.
I'm happy to show it to you if you like to see
Thank
it.
you.
Okay,
Yes.
here we go.
And your most recent masterclass is the Insects Masterclass, which you launched in September of 2023.
Did, yeah, that was this past year's masterclass. I kind of try to do them like one a year because there's so much work that goes into it. That's kind of the max I can handle in a year is one. So yeah, so this is the 2023, and insects
And we
is
saw this beautiful neck piece before. Excuse me
oh,
for interrupting you.
yeah.
We saw this beautiful neck piece once before with the beetle shells. And we, they're so lush and beautiful, it's easy to forget that they actually come from insects. And so this is one of the pieces you showed during the first week, the week of inspiration, for the insects masterclass, right?
It is, yeah, insects, I mean, I'm so passionate about insects, I love insects, and so you can see, like, even in my older work that like this piece, there was a lot of use of insects. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Appreciation, respect, and
respect,
honoring insects.
definitely.
And then two more inspirational neck pieces featuring actual beetle parts.
Yeah, so these were it was so exciting to find these pieces. On the left-hand side, the one that you see is made with what appears to be like green stones. Those
Mm.
are actual beetles. They are from about 1890 and they come from Paris from a supplier of jewelry supplies who had a lot of, they call it new old stock. So it's old, but it's never been used in original packaging. And those beetles were really popular in the Victorian period. They used them in jewelry, they made hat pins, all sorts of stuff with them. I have pieces that have them, like original Victorian pieces that have them, but I never had seen them as a modern material that I could find, nothing close to it. So when I discovered those, it was like the find of a lifetime, and I got a whole bunch, and I just basically use them in my own work because I don't really have that many. So I kind of don't sell them other than in my own pieces. But it was really an exciting find and something different to work with. And then I used the gold cylinder beads. So those are the 24 karat plate. And then there's some cubic zirconia stones that sort of reminiscent of ruby that are used in that piece too. So
And did you say you had real rubies in this piece? I can't remember.
yeah, there are on each of the beetles, the bezel of the beetles, it's embellished with sort of like a light pink stone, and those are actual rubies. So yeah.
So the green things are actual beetles,
Hmm.
bodies of beetles.
Bodies of beetles.
Okay,
Yeah,
so the beetle has passed on to the next life and left us its beautiful body.
it has.
And these are durable, right? These will last.
Amazingly so, amazing. I mean, it's like those ones, well, 1890, what, 130 years old, and they're still here. I don't treat the small ones, I don't treat with resin or anything. They're just as they were. Um, and the only thing I do with those when I incorporate them into my pieces is I usually back them with a piece of suede because they still have all the legs on them.
Oh,
And
charming.
yeah, so I keep that part up.
Okay, so you hide the legs with
I,
suede.
I do.
Okay, good. I'm glad. It's a
Yeah.
magnificent piece. And you've got two clasps on it. Can you just say a few words about the double toggle clasp?
Yeah, so I love the symmetry of those. If you do a regular toggle, I like a regular toggle too, but it lacks the symmetry. And so with something like this where it's so bold and geometric, I wanted to maintain the symmetry throughout. So by doing the two triangles and then having a double bar toggle to connect it, you maintain that symmetry throughout. It also gives a little bit of versatility because you can produce multiple of that component. So that sort of the two toggles with the connector tab, you can make multiple of those with different lengths of connector tab, which would allow you to have different lengths of necklace. So, you know, the same necklace could be adjusted in its overall length by doing that. So
Okay.
I like using.
And the necklace on the right?
The necklace on the right is made using also an antique beetle that came from New York City from a they sort of had it was like millinery supply and things like that. But that was original stock in that shop as well. So about 1930. It's a much bigger beetle, and so for that one, I did actually apply resin to it just to protect it a little bit. The resin creates almost like a plastic coating over it, and especially something like that, I did want the body showing, so it does have legs. So in order to keep the legs like attached, the resin will create a layer over them. So there.
And techniques for this one.
Yeah, so in that one, peyote stitch in the bezel, peyote stitch in those rings and bands that you see at the front. The neck strap is like a netting done with pearls. And at the back are those, you see them a lot in my work, those kind of funky end caps that I do, which are a combination of peyote stitch and herringbone.
Okay. So that's week one. Week two.
Week two, that's when we get into our beading. So what happened in the insects class is I wanted to, there's sort of different concepts with each of them. And with insects, the idea I had was to teach a different approach to design each week. So we'd have a project but within that project was a different way of approaching design. So this week, week 2, we made little components, and the concept was designing from components, because that's one way that I design. I'll make a whole bunch of components and then be like, huh, how are we going to put those together? So that was what this week was. So this week we actually made the bits and pieces, and then they got to decide. I had some suggestions, but they got to decide how they wanted to put them together. So you see a bumblebee, a ladybug, and dragonfly in that week.
Do you have them there by chance?
I do. Bumblebee. There he is. With his
It's
pom-pom.
wonderful.
Yeah.
I love the fur.
I know, me too. The pom-pom. I kind of had to. That's what I love about bumblebees, is they're furry. And then little ladybug coming into the picture there. Also fun one. And then somewhere I have, let's give you an example of a suggestion I had for them. So here's the dragonfly, but I've mounted it on a geometric form, which I also taught that week, and then created a necklace out of it. So I like to kind of give some ideas of how you can take what we've made and incorporate it into something. So that was that. Well, week 2, the first week of beading, is what we did.
Okay. And week 3.
Okay, week 3 was a really fun week for me. What I did is I wanted to teach about trial and error in design, because that's really how it is. I mean, it doesn't just work. So I actually filmed the whole process of my designing these. They're moths, they're sphinx moths. We did 2 different ones. But I filmed, the whole thing. Like I said, I've never done this because I usually just kind of work through stuff in my studio. But I would come in and I would film, okay, this is what I'm trying to make, and this is sort of the thought process. I'd go off, I'd try it, I'd come back and be like, okay, this is what I made. It doesn't work. Let's try something different. And I really talked through all that. And the students found it really helpful, because they said, it kind of shows you really the thought that goes in, and how you consider stitches and how they're going to work to create the forms you want to create. So it was great. And I have the example here of the death head sphinx, which is the first moth that we did that week. And it's here. And you can see the wings actually move on it too. It's kind of cool when wings move. But that guy is, if you're familiar with the death head sphinx, they have like a skull pattern on the back of the head. So this guy, I used a carved skull to get that look in it. But that was really fun. The wings were a real challenge for people, because it's peyote stitch, but it's peyote stitch in a shape. So it's not just straight peyote stitch. It's kind of fit beads where they're supposed to go. So it was a challenge, but people did well. They got it. So yeah.
And they like seeing your design process, I imagine.
Yeah, people loved that. More than I thought they would, so it was great.
Yeah. Kind of behind the scenes, real life.
It is. I like that. I like real life.
Yeah, me too. Week 4.
Week 4 was, so this week we talked about using an unconventional or using imaginative materials, kind of thinking unconventionally about how you can incorporate materials or things you can do to your materials to make them different. I think it's what makes pieces stand out when you incorporate an unusual element into it. So this week it was filigree. It was stamped in old molds. It was modern filigree, but it was a brass piece that had a cicada. And I took it to the powder coaters, who are the guys who do automotive paint. And they were very good sports. And when I showed up and asked them if they could powder coat my cicada, they did. It was very cool. It's powder coated in, in the picture, it's a little bit hard to see, but it's powder coated with a teal flake. So it's got a lot of sparkle to it. It's a great piece. And then I took the motif there and kind of built the beadwork to kind of play around it, reflect what was in the filigree. So yeah. Yeah.
And you're picking up in the beadwork, you're picking up on some of the motifs in the metal piece, right? The powder coated metal, like the leaves.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's it's called the Chinese money plant, and it's the ones that you see up in the neck strap that are brown and white. That's actually what it looks like, but you can see that form down by the cicada. So I picked up on that, put it in the piece. The little orange guys on either side are actually cicada forms. So they're teardrops, bezeled teardrops, but then they actually have little wings that are attached to them. So they look like cicadas too when you can see them.
It's a beautiful touch. Yeah.
Thanks.
Such a well integrated piece. I mean, I imagine students just loved it.
That was a popular one, yeah, people like the
Mhm.
colors a lot too, I think.
Oh yeah, the colors are fantastic.
Yeah.
And but then you must have brought back the other 99 uh, stampings to have the powder coating guys powder coat them. What were
Yeah,
they okay with that?
they were. I think it's the only reason they did the first one because they knew there were 99 coming up after
Okay.
that. But it was interesting because there's different normally they're coating these huge panels from cars, and so these
Mhm.
are so much more, or delicate that they had to develop a way of hanging them so that they could spray them. Because basically they spray them, bake them, spray them, and bake them. So it's like an enameling process that happens,
And it's permanent, obviously.
permanent, yeah, it's like
Mm,
forever permanent, yeah.
yeah. Fantastic. I love your how innovative you are and how resourceful. I mean, who would have thought of going to the local powder coating guys at the automotive shop?
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's what I really wanted to encourage people to think that way because it's
Mhm.
it's just out of the box, it's not a hard thing to do, it's just thinking differently about design,
Yeah,
so
so you're setting an example of being resourceful and going out in the world and seeing if you can get help for what you need.
exactly, exactly, yeah.
All right, so week 5.
Okay, week 5 was embroidery because I had some more requests. And so that was, that really was about working with embroidery that week. And we created this Luna moth, which is done on leather. I showed a slightly different, I do embroidery in several different ways. So I showed them a different approach that I do that involves stretching it in like a hoop. So I just try to incorporate new stuff in every master class that maybe people haven't seen. I don't think I've ever taught that before in any of my other classes. So I
Mm,
wanted to incorporate that. And yeah, and that was people enjoyed that too. I think people enjoy like when you throw a little embroidery in.
mhm. Are any of these beads, glow in the dark?
They are not. They're really vibrant though. They're really, really vibrant. They're like a semi-matte silver lined, so they almost glow. They're beautiful. And then the kind of larger ones that you see are shell operculum. They're actually
Mm,
shell beads. But they were good for kind of creating those eyes that you see on the
mhm,
wings of Luna
mhm.
moths. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic piece.
Hmm.
Okay, week 6.
Week 6 was so this week we did, basically the whole, concept was taking inspiration from, other cultures and other times in history. So this piece, when you look at it, you can see it's very Egyptian, but what I really tried to emphasize is it's not just recreating something, it's like trying to delve into that culture, and that mindset, and so I really encourage people to, like, if you're gonna do something Egyptian, like, go watch a bunch of documentaries on ancient Egypt, read the Egyptian Book of the Dead, like, whatever you gotta do to feel more Egyptian, and then take that and apply your own design aesthetic, and I think that that's the most effective historically inspired design work that you get, so that's what we.
And what about the beetle in this piece? Is it ceramic?
It's ceramic, yeah, and actually it was made in Egypt. So they're the sort of traditional scarab beads that they've had in Egypt for thousands and thousands of years. That I wanted to incorporate just because it was a element out of the culture itself. Um,
And other materials in this piece and other techniques?
Yeah, so the wings were a lot of fun to develop. They're just a weird combination of right angle weave, peyote stitch, and herringbone all like
Mm,
mishmashed together to create the curvature of the wings. Um,
mhm,
the bezels, those are all rivelis that have been bezeled with basic peyote stitch. The triangle that's created, that's the base for the scarab, is herringbone and peyote stitch. And then the next strap is chenille stitch, where you see those, that section of blue and gold, that's all chenille stitch. So,
mm.
yeah, yeah,
Fabulous piece.
thank you.
I love it. And week 7.
Week 7. So week 7 was about narrative in design. and how you can tell a story. So this piece that you see here, it's the story of the life cycle of a monarch. Monarchs are, I love them. I've collected them and hatched them for a long time, so they were something close to my heart. But I also thought it was a nice way to be able to tell this narrative. It's a fairly simple narrative, but it's the narrative of metamorphosis. And if you look at the left-hand side when you're looking at it, that is the caterpillar stage. So it's striped just the way a monarch caterpillar is. At the center front, you see the chrysalis. And if you're familiar with monarchs, that is the shape and form of the monarch chrysalis. I also put the ring in there, the circle, kind of for the circle of life in that pendant. And the leaves, obviously, on either side represent, what they eat. And then the right-hand side, when you look at it, is the wings of the monarch. So once it's hatched as a butterfly, I used netting for that side because it was sort of lacier and sort of more appropriate for the wings. And then
Mhm.
it's just regular herringbone stitch for the caterpillar side of it. And then the chrysalis is basically peyote stitch that I've done
So
with.
you've told the story of metamorphosis, the narrative. You very beautifully render it partly by color, using the color of the caterpillar, right? The colors yellow, green, white, and black, and then the colors of the monarch, uh, its wings, its beautiful orange and black wings,
Mhm.
and the chrysalis goes in the middle.
Mhm.
Let me ask you, where did you get these leaves, these green leaves?
Oh, they're crystal. I think they're actually, I don't think they're Austrian crystal. I want to say they're Chinese crystal. But they were kind of perfect because I wanted to incorporate, I needed something else, not just the seed beads, and I wanted something that worked with the overall theme. So the crystal leaves just kind of, they made sense. They were the right thing to put in there. So
Yeah, they complement everything else just beautifully, like they were meant to be there.
thanks.
And there was a book for this class.
There was, which I have. Where is my book for? Ah, here it is. There's beads and books all over the place.
Good, good.
This is the Insect Masterclass book. Again, a really big one with lots of pages,
Mm.
illustrations, insect information, you name it. Some really cool inspirational photographs. So yeah, so I enjoy making the books. It's a lot of work, but it's a different part of my brain that I get to use. So I enjoy the writing, it's great.
Yeah. And your parents sometimes help you with the editing, right? Because they're professors. So what
Yeah,
could be better,
exactly.
Um,
They don't do technical beading stuff, but they do read a lot of the other stuff. They're great.
perfect, perfect. Built-in grammar specialists. Not that you need it.
Yeah,
Um, so that's the insects master class. Can we see the trailer?
absolutely.
Thank you. So your fifth masterclass is devoted to the codex, the concept of the codex, and you're launching it in spring of 2024. So any month now, very soon now, right?
Yep. The goal is, if everything stays on target, is to launch it in April. And then it will start a month later. There's always a delay with the masterclass because I have a lot of international students, so I need to really allow a month's time for the supplies to get to them, even though they're ready, and they ship out right away. They do take time, so I don't like to jump ahead and start until everybo's like ready. So I'll wait a month. So it'll be May by the time we start. But yeah, this is the latest and the greatest of master classes.
So how did you get the idea to devote a masterclass to the concept of the codex? So it's kind of a codex is it's a book of esoteric knowledge, right? Rare knowledge, often illustrated, beautifully illustrated.
It is. It's kind of an interesting concept. It started with a friend of mine was looking at my work, and he said to me, "This looks like stuff out of the Voynich manuscript," and I was like, "The what?" Like, I don't know what that is. So, being curious, I had to investigate it thoroughly, and it's a really amazing medieval manuscript that's written in code. They have not been able to break the code on that, but it has some beautiful illustrated botanicals that are not real botanicals. They're like fantasy botanicals in it. And they don't really know what it is. There's a lot of theories about it, but they just don't know, and no one to this day has been able to crack the code on that one. So I thought, it's inspiring, and it's not just the images, but like the mystery behind it is very exciting. So I started then looking around at different codices because there's a lot of them throughout time, and I picked 4 of them. I mean, there's so many, but I picked 4 and used those as the basis for the projects that I developed for the class. And it's kind of cool. I've tried to build the whole codex concept into it. So there's a lot of background information on codices. There's a little opportunity to break some code during the class. I've developed a sort of syllabus where there is actually code breaking that is required of students. So that's kind of neat. And I think it's going to be really fun. I'm really excited about it. The classes or the projects that we've done are really a lot of fun. So yeah.
And the first codex that you're showing to students is the Book of Kells, right?
Yeah, it is. So the Book of Kells is again, it's earlier than medieval. I think it's about 800, a religious codex that was produced, and the imagery is just amazing. If you're into Celtic knotwork or anything like that, you probably have seen it. So
And the
yeah.
Book of Kells comes from Ireland. Was it written in Ireland, or what is now Ireland?
Yeah, I think there's sort of like they're not quite sure, but it was written in there's some Viking involvement in it, and it was written in either Scotland or Ireland, and then it ended up in Ireland, and then there was a Viking invasion, and it got like stowed away, and then it was saved through that. So it has a really interesting story. It's now in Dublin at Trinity College is where it's housed now, but it's beautiful, and hundreds of pages of this ornate, like, knotwork. So I took that to inspire one of the projects. Yeah.
And this is a bracelet here with a fish motif.
It is. It's like it's an embroidery piece because I like to put a little embroidery in now because it makes some people happy. And so it was a fun piece to design. It's taken off one of the images, and there's all these kind of weird creatures in the knotwork in the Book of Kells. So it's just one of those that I took to make this. Yeah.
Okay. And another week will be devoted to the Codex Seraphinalis, if I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Oh yeah, it's the Codex Seraphinianus. It's a modern codex, which is unusual because generally the term is applied to older documents, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. And that was created by an Italian artist and published first in 1981. Very surreal. His sort of aesthetic is extreme surrealism, and he created this codex that they say it's unbreakable, but he himself claims that it was never intended to be broken, and that it was created to sort of recreate the experience of reading a book as a child when you can't read words. So to see what that's about, to kind of experience as an adult what it's like to not be able to understand the words. But it's very, very, very cool too. Great.
So it has fantastic images drawn by this artist, and it has words that can't be read.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's a wild experience in and of itself. So, yeah.
And then you had mentioned the Voynich manuscript a few minutes ago. And you devote 1 week to it or 2 weeks to it?
There's actually 2 weeks. 1 week is a piece of jewelry and another week is a sculpture, and, I think here we're showing the sculptural piece from the voynich.
And I feel like we've just come full circle. We started, looking at, by looking at your wildflowers masterclass, and here are wildflowers from a different universe.
Very
It
wild.
seems, more complex, more elaborate, more surreal, and more amazing even. So how did you come to construct these flowers?
Um, yeah, so well, the Voynich one, it's not an exact reproduction, but again, it was like what I came up with in my head after reading the Voynich manuscript or attempting to read the Voynich manuscript. But that piece or this piece here is made using it's peyote stitch, different elements which are stitched together. There's those fun little flowers on the tops. It incorporates wire in its structure as well. I like to kind of incorporate different things like that because I think it's useful in the learning process and allows you to do more with your own
And I
work.
love how you photograph them from different angles. So we can, you can't really just look at one photo of this amazing, botanical and hope to understand it. You really need multiple points of view.
You
But
do.
you've done that really well.
It's very dimensional work, and I think
Mhm.
it like a picture. It's very hard to capture
Mhm.
it. A picture.
So this is a sculpture.
It is sculpture. Yeah. What I did in this class is I alternate back and forth. So 1 week is a piece of jewelry, then a sculpture, then a piece of jewelry, then a sculpture, then a piece of jewelry, then a sculpture. So we flip flop back and forth.
Okay. And the Voynix, it also has words that in a code that has not yet been broken. Did I understand you correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. It was I wanna say that, don't quote me here, that it was produced in, like, the 1400s,
Mm.
and it has kind of a mysterious history, appeared in and out of history for a while, and then was, acquired by a rare books collector in, like, early 1900s, and actually, it's very cool because it's housed at Yale, which is just not too far down the road from me. You can't go see it because it's, so delicate, you can't get into the rare books collection to see it.
Okay.
It is there, and you can see it all online. But yeah, it's to this day they can't crack the code on that one. So it's kind of
Wow.
it's
Okay.
interesting.
So you're not yet finished with the book for this masterclass. You're working on it as we speak. You're nearly done.
I am almost done. Yeah,
It's a huge amount of effort, 150, 200 pages. It's enormous.
it is. It's I have to say, like, having written books for publishers and had that experience, the amount of effort that goes into that, I thought that was a lot. I would say a master class is literally like 4 or 5 times the amount of effort that for me went into writing a book. So
And you're doing it all. You're doing it all. Melissa Shippey is doing the diagrams, but you're doing literally everything else.
yeah, and I do have to say I have a wonderful studio assistant who helps me with the kits. Champagne is great, and, she handles a lot of that now because just the kit making, I mean, it's unbelievable, months worth of kit making that has to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it has to be exact. You really insist upon precision in your when you're packing your kits, and you have different systems for making sure that each kit is packed correctly.
Yeah, we really do. It's very, mistakes are mistakes are made, but we really do have a system that's pretty good, and Champagne is incredibly detail oriented. So we're a good pair in that regard. She's really great, and yeah, it's really important to me that people, don't get like held up because they don't have all their beads. So
And have you finished the trailer for the Codex Masterclass?
if I have,
Well,
yeah,
I would love to see it.
okay, here it is.
Thank you. Wow, that's another inspiring trailer. I mean, I think this one is going to sell out too.
I hope it's one of I don't know, it's funny, I always say, like, whatever one I'm working on is my favorite one yet. I
Mm,
love the Wildflowers because it was my first one, it was my baby, but I really am psyched about this one. I think it's gonna be really
yeah.
good. So,
Very innovative. And I mean, no one else is doing anything like this that I know of in this field.
yeah.
You're the first. So Laura, I have to say, brava. I mean, it's not just that no one else is doing this, you're doing it with such complete and total dedication, and focus, and just a very, very high standards of accomplishment and of teaching, and educating people. And having also, I think you focus on fun. You want your students to have a good time while they're doing this, not to focus too much on the completed piece, the stress of having to complete a piece perfectly, but the process of enjoying putting together the piece, day by day, learning different ideas and just enjoying stitching,
Mhm.
right? That
Yeah.
I think that's also a different way to teach.
Yeah, I think
Definitely.
that's really important. I mean, if you're gonna really enjoy it and be happy, you have to be in the present, you know? I think that's true of life as well, but it certainly would
Yeah.
be too,
Yeah. Well said.
yeah.
I want to share with people the address of your website so that anyone can go there at any time and take a look. It's justletmebead.com. And obviously, it's a website, it's always open. There's plenty of, I looked at it the other day, there's plenty of things to check out. Are some of the master classes we talked about today available for sale?
So what I do is I will rerun them if there's enough interest in them. So a couple of them, like in fact right now I'm doing a session of wildflowers with about 15 people in it. What I do is kind of people will reach out and say, "Hey, I'd really like wildflowers." So I'll collect some names, and then when I get to a point where it seems like I have enough to run it, most of the reason I want to it's like it's an experience. So I need a large enough group of people that they can experience it together, you know.
Mhm.
So I will wait until I have enough people to be able to do that. But if I can get 10 people, you know, it's I'll run them again. So I always encourage people if there's something you're interested in, like reach out, send me an email, and then I'll put you on my list and I'll keep you posted as to, you know, whether or not
Okay.
to do it. Yeah.
And I also want to share with viewers that we have two more meetings together.
Yeah.
The next one that's going to be posted to my YouTube channel fairly soon is going to be me asking you questions. Okay, some of which you've been told about in advance, and some of which you have not. And then you are also going to share with us three videos showing us different aspects of your life and narrating different aspects of your life. You're going to show us your cabinet of curiosities containing all sorts of amazing different things that you've collected, and your beaded purse collection. I want to see that too.
Absolutely.
Your butterfly hatching area. Okay, that's the botanist in you, or maybe there's a different word. Growing insects,
Oh
growing
yeah.
butterflies.
Yeah, what is that?
Um,
Technology? I don't know. I
I'm
think
not sure what entomology. Entomology, is that the
technology,
right word?
thank
Okay,
you.
and you're the entomologist in you. And you're gonna show us a clip of your parents talking about what you were like as a child.
I am. That
Okay, that's going to be interesting.
yes.
Okay.
So
You're going to show us some portion of your studio space.
I will. I will.
Awesome. I can't wait to see that too.
Yeah.
And other things. Have I forgotten anything?
Think that's it. Yeah, I think that's
Okay.
the
All
basics.
right.
Yeah.
Maybe some friends at one of your weekly dinner parties.
Yeah, I'll see if I can get them to
See
I
if
don't
you
know
can
if I
see
wanna
if they're
get
willing.
them. We'll
Maybe
see.
offer some wine or beer or something like that.
Exactly.
Anyway, I want to encourage viewers to post questions, put them, just write them into this YouTube channel to the slot, and I will look at them. And if I can, I'll incorporate them into our second meeting. Okay. And if I can't, then they can come to our third meeting and ask you the question directly because we're going to be live on YouTube. And just, taking questions that anyone can type in and ask you something they want to know. Right?
Absolutely.
All
Absolutely.
right. So we've come to the end. And Laura, I have to thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
Well,
I just love meeting with you and spending time with you, preparing for this and, reading everything about you. Amazing Renaissance woman, a superwoman, Renaissance woman.
thank you.
Well done.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, and I'll see you in our next meeting.
Indeed.